Good evening. This session pitches on neural networks. So then, the thing is, I'll have to make a lot of assumptions that you know a lot of things. But then, if you don't know and I take the class ahead, then it's a complete wastage of time. But a lot of people you seem to be from business analytics and all. So I wonder whether you have idea what is supervised learning, unsupervised learning, what is maximum likelihood, what is ordinary least square estimates. If you know all that, then I can just move on, or we can, like, how good are you with, say, Bernoulli distribution or binomial distribution? So okay, so I think it's 35 now, so let's start the class. I'll introduce myself. My name is Sumit. I work with Lecturon. I help them in content development and in teaching. I teach various machine learning topics, Python, R, deep learning. I've done PhD in quantitative methods from IIM Bangalore, where my work involved Markov chains and Markov decision process and things like that. A lot of quantitative optimization to solve business problems with managerial insights. So I come in the intersection of the domain where business, computing, and statistics or econometrics or mathematics meet. I have work experience in industry also. Worked with different organizations. My first work with was a healthcare organization where I worked in their working capital locked in inventory. Next was in telecom domain, trying to develop diffusion modeling, anomaly analytics, and stuff around that. And currently, my job involves doing forecasting, predictive analytics, ensemble learning for commodities price prediction, volume requirement for FMCG, how much to buy, when to buy, at what price to buy, what decision was good. So kind of bit of reinforcement learning, bit of multi-unbanded problem and stuff like that. In today, we'll be going through a brief introduction of neural networks. So since it's a webinar, it's an introduction class, it'll give more of a flavor than what the actual class is. It'll give you an idea that how much deep in mathematics we can go, how much deep in business context we can go, and how much of an understanding we can get. During the class, if you feel that you don't want to do so much mathematics, then you can let me know. Or if you don't want to do so much programming, you can let me know, and I can modify things accordingly. So let me start. The first thing that we look into is do you understand the difference between classification and regression? Can you give me examples of algorithm that you use in regression? You can just chat. You don't have to say. And can you give me examples of algorithms that we use in classification? Since I cannot see your face, I cannot make out whether you're understanding or not. I'll be really grateful if you could keep chatting. Decision tree and support vector machine, that's right. So what kind of algorithm, what is it used for decision tree and support vector machine? Is it used for classification or it's used for regression? Good, Mahesh, that's right. Which is the most famous algorithm of decision tree? There's CADE, there is CART, and what does CART stand for? Anyone knows? CART, CART. So CART stands for classification and regression tree. The decision tree can be used both for classification and regression, whereas support vector machine is used for classification. It separates the quantity into different boundaries. Okay, so just to give you a small example before we proceed. So if I have regression, the simple is linear regression. It's a regression algorithm. What kind of algorithm is logistic regression? Is it a classification algorithm or a regression algorithm? This is a simple regression algorithm. I draw a line for how many people have traveled to foreign in certain period, how many have gone to China from that country, will give the number of COVID-19 cases in that country. So Italy had a lot of flights during that point of time with China. In fact, Wuhan had a lot of people coming from China. Lombardy in Italy had a lot of people coming from Wuhan in China. So Italy had high number of this. And then people in France and Germany had visited Italy during the holidays, so they have a high number. People in America had visited Italy, and then it increases in that number. So this is a kind of a regression. In case of classification, what are the chances whether a person will get COVID-19 or not? So a person who is sitting at home all the time, okay? A person who is taking utmost care, a person who has very strong immune system, a person who has not traveled anywhere, a person who is in a village, all these people will not get COVID-19. But if a person, just let me change my pen color. If a person has been to Italy of late, or has been to some single source or some big congregation, has done foreign travels, have been in a very crowded place, okay? So all these people will be COVID-19 positive. Now, if you are in a village in Peru or in Zimbabwe, then there may be a less likelihood chance, or a far off village in Arunachal. But if you are in Mumbai Dharavi, or if you are in Lombardy or Wuhan or in Nizamuddin in Delhi, then there's a high chance that you may be COVID positive. So here you just draw the boundary. Okay. So this is a classification problem. Now the different kinds of classification problem: decision tree, support vector machine, random forest. But you didn't tell me whether logistic regression is a classification algorithm or a regression algorithm. Logistic regression, the word has regression in it, but it's basically a classification algorithm. Great. So let's move on. We understand what's the difference between classification and regression. So this is a gate. It's an AND gate. Okay. You must have studied in electronics, or if you have not a big deal. So suppose my value, this is x-axis, this is y-axis. If my there are two dimensions on which I'm talking, and the color here is the third dimension. So instead of drawing a 3D graph, I have used color as the third dimension. Now, x-axis says that whether you have been to a crowded place or not, and y-axis says that, oh, just leave that. So if x is positive and y is positive, both are positive, then my color is blue. But if any of them is negative, here in this red color, y is positive but x is negative. In this fourth quadrant, x is positive but y is negative. And in this third quadrant, both x and y are negative. And I want to classify, I want to separate, I need a boundary. I need a hyperplane that separates the blues from the reds. So it's very simple over here. I draw a line over here, anywhere from here to here. So the maximum width that I can draw, a whole road with a gutter and a median and all, and that's the support vector machine. Okay? Or it can be k nearest neighbor classifier or things like that. So that is an AND gate, and clustering is different from regression and classification. Now I have a case where that's an OR gate. If any one is positive, then it's a blue color, otherwise it's a red color. So over here in the first quadrant, both x and y are positive, so it's blue in color. So can you say where I should draw the line over here? Like same as the above graph, or where should I draw it? Minus x minus y, that's right. Third quadrant, if I draw a line like this, very good. Then I separate the red from the blue. These were very simple. Now let me see if you can answer the next question. This is the XOR gate, okay? If both are positive or both are negative, it's a red. And if either one of them is positive, then it's a blue. At least if one is positive and one is negative, then it's a blue. Now I can't have true lines. So how will you draw a line over here? Shall I draw it in the third quadrant, or where should I draw it? Any idea? Anyone? Please let me know. Or it can't be drawn and there's some other method that you know of. Cluster will be made. That's an interesting observation. Let's see, how will you make that cluster? I can make a cluster like this, but then these two fellows are out. I cannot make a cluster like this, right? Because there are many points on this quadrant which are all blue. So somewhere it will fail. So the cluster will not work over here, but a very good try. So what are you saying? Plus y minus x plus x minus y. So I'll be saying let's take the product of these. I think that's a good try. So let's take this red dot. So one is it a comma or what is it? It's a comma. So but these are so then they are coordinate points. Are you asking me to take their product or what should I do? Okay, then let's give it a try with one of the method. There are multiple methods and I hope you know some of them. But the method that I'll use is the one that takes us closer to neural nets. Okay, now suppose these are the x values and y values. I1 is the input value, I2 is the input. There are only two inputs, x and y. Let's take the case when both are positive. Okay, so can you tell me this is 1 and this is 1. I1 is 1, I2 is 1. So let us draw that I1 is 1, I2 is 1. And these are the weights 1 and 1. So I do 1 into 1 and that gives me H1. Okay. How, any idea what would H2 be? This into this plus this into this. So 1 into 1 plus 1 into 1 is 2. Okay. And what would H3 be? 1 into 1, it will be 1. Now let's calculate O naught. Can you please calculate O naught, the output for me, please? The first output, the zeroth output. This into this, plus this into this, plus this into this. Minus 2. 2 minus 2 is a minus 4, plus 1 minus 2. That's right. Let's do when both are negative 1. Okay. So when both are negative 1, then this guy will be minus 1, this guy will be minus 1, and this guy will be minus 2. Can you tell me what the output would be? That's right. Minus 2 into minus 2 is plus 4 and plus 4 plus 1 is plus 2. Let's do the third case. Let's do when one is minus 1 and the other is plus 1. So let's say the first fellow is minus 1 and the second fellow is plus 1. Can you tell me what the output would be? Let's say so minus 1 into 1 is this is 0. Similarly, this is 0 and this is plus minus 1. So this is also 0. The final value is 0. Is that okay? So that's right. Very good. And the same thing will happen if I take plus 1 and minus 1. So then I take the modulus of the value. Okay. If the modulus is greater than 0, then the points are have the same sign. And if the modulus is equal to 0, then the points have opposite sign. Is that understood? Any doubts, any questions? Please ask. So like in regression, these are weights. These are the input values. These are input values and these are their weights. And then I get these output values. And then I have another weights and I do regression again. Like I multiply them and get the final output value. There's somewhere in between is something happening in between another layer that I have created to come to the output. This is the input layer. This is a middle layer or called hidden layer. And this is the output layer. Okay. So regression is happening over here. Regression is happening over here. And regression is happening over here. But I have nodes. The input nodes, regression happens to give the hidden layer nodes. And then with the hidden layer nodes, I do regression to get the output. And then I define certain conditions on that. We'll understand this more as we go by. So let's quickly do logistic regression as a revision. So the same thing is happening over here. Now here I have these inputs. So what is in logistic regression, as you correctly said, it's a classification problem. Whether a person will be COVID positive or not is a classification problem. Whether the economy will go back nicely this year or not is a classification problem. Whether it is going to rain tomorrow or not is a classification tomorrow. Yes or no is a classification problem. Okay. Whether you would understand anything at the end of the class. So if I say that I have understood neural nets, whatever was taught, and I've understood nothing, if I say like that, it's a 1-0 problem. But then if I say no, I understood 10%, 15%, 23%. Now, no one knows how you calculate that 15, 23%, but that is more of a regression problem. So here we calculate the input W1 into Y1, W2 into Y2, W3 into Y3, and that gives me the induced local field. So like in normal linear regression, what I do, there is a W naught plus what you write as beta naught and x1 beta 1 is W1 over here. I'm calling it as weights, W1 Y1 plus W2 Y2 plus W3 Y3. So that is basically this summation. W naught comes over here, that's called bias, and then I sum them up. W naught into 1 plus W1 into Y1 plus W2 into Y2 plus W3 into Y3. So far, this is a linear regression. Okay. So once I have that value, I call that induced local field. Okay. I call that the induced local field Vj. Then if I have Vj above a certain threshold, then I say that whether the thing would happen or not. So suppose I'm checking, how many people you met in the last few weeks, how many kilometers you have traveled, how much distance away from your home have you traveled, and if I do all this and I get a certain number, and if that is greater than 100, then there's a high probability that the person will get a COVID case. And if that is less than 100, then it's very highly unlikely that the person will get COVID or anything like that. That is called the activation function. Okay. So I have a regression value, linear regression value, and then I say that if it's beyond this, then yeah, yes. If it's not beyond this, then it's no. Okay. So that's it. So that is a simple linear regression. We'll keep picking up the vocabularies as we go. So this is called the induced local field over here. And then the activation function. There can be different kinds of activation function. We'll be going through a few of them. The first one is the sigmoid function. The next one is the rectified linear function, ReLU function. Another one is Stanish function. Then we have more functions like that. Softmax is also there, and there are variations of ReLU functions. Okay. Now this is a simple sigmoid function, 1 upon 1 plus e raised to minus x. So whatever I get the induced local field over here, I replace that over here as x. Like the linear regression part, I put it over here, and then I see what is the value that I get. Now this is what the function looks like. These are the people. These triangles are the people who got COVID-19. This process are the people who did not get COVID-19. I cannot draw a linear regression over here and get these points. I need something like this. This is a sigmoid function. The blue color line that you see is the sigmoid function. The red dots that you see is the derivative of that sigmoid function. So when we do the class, if you have the appetite for it and you want to understand how that derivative comes, then we will sit and do that as well. We will plot this in Python matplotlib, and we will see how it happens, and we'll have practical applications. So this is called the logistic function, where this sigmoid function. So this 1 upon 1 plus e raised to minus x can be written as e raised to x upon 1 plus e raised to x. When I divide the numerator and denominator both by e raised to x, I get that. And x is nothing but that the linear regression part that I have, w naught plus w1 times the cross product of all the weights and the input value. So that gives me the probability, the logistic function. And if I do px by 1 minus px, then I get the log odds. the odds without the log. And if I take log of these, I get the log odds. So that's how we calculate the logistic regression. But what is unknown over here? Can you tell me what is known over here and what is unknown? We have probability of x, 1 minus px, e, w naught, w1 and x. First tell me what all is known over here. Is x known over here? Yes or no? Please let me know. Very good, Ankit. Gaurav, you are right. Since yes, x is the input variable, I know whether a person has traveled a lot or not, whether he has met a lot of people, whether he went for a party with that singer, I forgot her name, or not. So all those facts I know. Probability is known because I have the output data. Given these conditions, has the person fallen sick or not? I have the output data. So the probability is known. E is what? What is E over here? Is it known? E is a Euler's constant. Gaurav, as correctly says, it's a universal. So what is unknown are those weights. What do we have to find out are the weights. That's it. That's the problem that we have to solve. W naught and the series of W's that I have, that is what we don't know. That's correct, Pooja, absolutely right. So how do we calculate those weights? So that's the question. So the whole logistic regression or linear regression or neural nets is about calculating those weights. In case of neural nets, you generally won't know the weights. We'll see how and why. But to understand how these weights are calculated is important to in our approach to neural nets. So when I take a log of this log of odds, so log of e raised to anything, this is log natural. So that becomes w naught plus xw. And when I solve this, then, or I just solve this guy, then I get px is equal to this and 1 minus px is this. Now, how many of you have any idea about what maximum likelihood is? How do we calculate maximum likelihood estimate and what is the philosophical significance of it? Great, absolutely nice. So do you toss a coin, okay? And you know what a biased coin is, okay? So you know already the probability whether a coin is biased or not. Suppose my coin has a 0.7 probability that it will show heads. So if I toss the coin 100 times, okay, what is the probability? What are the chances? Like what would you bet? Around how many heads will I get? This coin has a bias of 0.7 and I toss the coin 100 times. What is your rough estimate? That's correct, Gaurav. Anyone else? Absolutely. But how would you know already that the coin has a probability 0.7? So now this is the PDF, probability density function, the whole Bernoulli distribution where we are coming from. But will you ever know from before? Like people ask this question, that a bag is full of 7 black balls and 3 green balls. I pick up a ball at random. What is the probability that I'll get a green ball? Now, who in real life would go and sit and do that? Like, what fun would be that? I put 10 balls in a bag and I put 7 green and 3 red and I invite all my homes for a party and I ask them, hey, you know, let me see whether you pick up a ball and what probability you'll get. That's no one is going to do that. The reality is the other way around. The bag is full of balls and I picked 3 balls with replacement and the first ball was a green and the second was a red and the third was a red. Now I have to make a estimate that how many balls of all the balls in the bag are green and how many balls of all the balls in the bag are red. So that's how maximum likelihood is. Like, you are not going to get a coin and someone say, hey, I made it to be exactly 0.7 bias. You'll have a coin and you go for a bet or some game and you have to figure out what the bias of the coin is. This p equal to 0.7 is never known. So how will you find out what's the P for that coin? How will you know whether the coin is biased or not? And if it's biased, what is its bias? Suppose you have a coin. Any answer? Probably it's too much to type. That's why you guys don't want to type. You have a coin. You have a hunch that it's biased. You don't know what its bias is, what its P is. How will you try to figure that out? Based on earlier experience. That's right. And suppose it's a new coin, you'll create an experience. You will toss the coin 100 times. Okay. And suppose you get 70 heads. What will be your estimate of P? You toss the coin 100 times or you toss the coin 1000 times and you get 700 heads. What's your estimate for P? That's right, 0.7. Okay. So probability distribution function is like that. That given the parameter, what will be the distribution of the data? Okay. I have P. What would X look like? Maximum likelihood estimate is the other way around. I have data. What will P be? Okay. So I don't know P. So what is the parameter? I estimate that. And that is what maximum likelihood estimate is. That's all that it's over here. That given this data, given the person has traveled these many miles in last 3 months, has been to these many foreign countries, has met these many people, has been to party with that. Anyone remembers the name of that singer who met a lot of politicians? I think she has sung the song Baby Doll and all those songs. Kanika Kapoor. Thanks. Yeah. Whether you have met Kanika Kapoor or not, whether you have met the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson or not, or Prince Charles or not. Okay. So given all this, what's the probability that you will get? So you don't know that. So you have data. You start running it. You collect all those data. Who all people met Kanika? Who all people went to Nizamuddin? Who all met Boris Johnson? Who all met this? Who went to Dharavi and all those things? And you get a maximum likelihood estimate. That's all that it is. It's a very simple thing. You do 5 questions, 10 questions, it will always be clear in your head what maximum likelihood estimate is. Here I quickly do it. So the likelihood function is, this is a simple Bernoulli distribution. Each case is whether a person has got or not. So probability it's heads 1, probability it's tails 1 minus 1. So Bernoulli's output is either 1 or 0. So 1 minus 1 is 0. So yi is either 1 or 0. If I get a head, then yi is 1. If someone has got a COVID case, then it's a 1. If someone has not got a COVID case, then yi is 0. Or if I get a tail, yi is 0. And yi, because I do 1000 tosses, I is 1 to 1000. I pick up sample of thousands of people whether they have got COVID or not. So I is 1 to that. And so on and so forth. I hope this example is not depressing you or something. In that case, I'll change it. So then the likelihood of what I'm looking for, the likelihood of the weights. What is the likelihood of the weights given that this is my outcome? So then I find out, the whole intention is to find out those weights. So then for what weights is this condition maximum? Okay. So given a weight, if I draw graphs like this, that if this was my weight, this is my weight, this is my weight, this is my weight, then the probability looks like this. Okay. So for this particular set of weights, I've drawn it in 2 dimension, but basically it's a 3-dimension graph. Okay. But it's difficult to draw. So suppose this is W0 or W1. Then I want to find out this point. I take a combination of W0, W1, it gives us this probability, and the actual data gives this probability. So at this weights, the probability of the actual weight matches my calculation. So how do I calculate this weights? For what value of this will I reach this point? What in class 11 or 12 you learn will help you find this out. A very simple thing. Extrapolation is a very good thought process. That's a possibility, but I'm looking for a much simpler answer, which you would have quickly said if you were a class 11 or 12 student. Break even point is also a good try, but how do you do it mathematically? That's this is a graph. This is a mountain. I'm climbing the mountain, and I want to be at the highest point of the mountain. I want to know what this values, the base values are for which I reach the highest points. First order condition and the second order condition. Wonderful answer, Pooja. Very good. So the second order is used to for the confidence interval, and the first order is used to get the point of the maxima. Okay. Yeah, the second order is used to see whether it's maxima or minima, but it's also used to find the width of the confidence interval. So we will discuss that later. That the value of second order tells us how peaked this graph would be. Okay. So the second order condition tells us that whether I'll reach my maxima soon or whether I'll take a lot of time to reach my maxima. The mountain is really peak. I have to move really very short distance along the x-axis to reach the peak of the mountain, or I have to traverse a lot to reach the peak of the mountain. In the class, we'll also discuss the gradient descent, the stochastic gradient descent. What if the mountains are like this? And I've reached this peak and I think that I have reached the peak. Or the mountain ends here, it's a border condition, and I've reached this peak and I'm not able to take the derivative over there. So we'll learn all these things depending on your appetite and your requirement, or we'll keep it as simple as possible. Okay, so moving on. Okay, so we take the log likelihood that the product becomes sum, and we just do it for mathematical convenience. And then we take the first order condition, we differentiate it with respect to the different weights, and that we equate it to 0, and we get the values of W0, W1, W2 and W3. Isn't it extremely simple mathematically? All this W1, W2, W3, W0 are very easy to calculate. Is that right? So logistic regression is a very simple problem, and then what is left is the classification, misclassification, true positive, true negative, sensitivity, specificity, ROC curve, 10 minutes and done. We hardly spend any time on logistic regression, and this is all the mathematics that's there, and we have understood it quite well. We just need practice and we are good with it. So then, like, that was the activation function. Sigmoid was 1 upon 1 plus e raised to x. Okay. E raised to minus x, sorry. 1 upon 1 plus e raised to minus x, or e raised to x upon 1 plus e raised to x. Similarly, we have rectified linear unit, which is the simplest form, which is more commonly used in neural nets. Now, what is, this is a rectified linear unit. What is the problem with this graph? Where can it cause a problem? Okay, again, something that you learned in class 11 and 12 will help you answer this question. Rectified linear units is just saying that if my value is greater than 0, then I take that value. If my value is negative, I just take 0. Okay. So if my value is minus 2, the rectified linear unit will give what as the output? If I put minus 2 inside ReLU, the output would be based on this graph. Can you tell me? Very good, Preksha. Anyone else? That's right, Nagarjun. Anyone has any doubt I'm going too fast or too slow? Please let me know. That's right, Pooja. Very good. So this will be 0. And what will be ReLU for plus 4? Equal to 4. That's right. So that's simple. You understand what's ReLU, you understand what's sigmoid. Tan H is very simple to sigmoid. It's like this: e raised to x plus minus e raised to minus x, e raised to x plus e raised to minus x. So the difference between sigmoid and tan H is sigmoid starts from 1 and goes to 0. But what if my value is positive and negative, like plus 1 and minus 1? If my output, I want to keep it as plus 1 and minus 1, then I make it as a tan H function. If I want to keep the output as anything greater than 0 is the value, anything less than 0 is 0, then I keep that as a ReLU. Similarly, we have a leaky ReLU where it's not 0, but it is very damped. Like minus 4 would be close to minus 0.4 or something like that. If my alpha is say 1 by 10, minus 6 will be 0.6. Or if my alpha is 100, then minus 4 would be minus 0.04. And so on and so forth. So you understand what's a ReLU, what's a leaky ReLU, what's a tan H. So this is all the 4 put together over here with their mathematical formula. These diagrams are not mine. Whatever I'm teaching, nothing has been created by me. Especially this diagram I have picked up from the internet, whichever way one was the best. A lot of other diagrams I've drawn myself, like these graphs are drawn by me. So let's do a simple question, something we have already done. So here there is no bias. That means there is no W naught. Okay. But here is an input. Here input I1 equal to 4 and input I2 is equal to 3. Cool. And the weight from this one to this guy to this guy is 1. This guy to this guy is -2. This input to this guy is +1 and this input to this guy is +2. Can you tell me what will be replacement for this question mark over here on the top, for the question mark at the bottom, and what will be the final output? O0. I'll give you 1 minute time. All the three answers separated by comma. First, second, third. Good. So I have got answers from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. And 3 people have exactly same answer. 2 people have little differences. Give me a moment for others to try. Please, others do try. One else wants to try. Have I lost you guys? Did I go too fast? I'm really sorry. Okay. So I'm getting a lot of different answers. Very interesting. So let us try. Or if you do this, no, you have almost understood neural nets. I'll give you 1 more minute. Please try. If you want, I can start from the start again. Okay. If you have understood this, you have almost understood basics of neural nets. Most of you have got it right. Someone has done some small silly mistake. So let's see. The first one, 1 into 4, 3 into 1, add them up 7. We'll start doing all that by linear algebra and we'll see beauty of linear algebra, how it rotates the axis, how it elongates along certain axis, what visually eigenvalue decomposition does. And that will be, we'll take things at a different level. But as of now, let's stick to basics. And then the below part, many of you have done this wrong. So I don't know if you are picking up the wrong quotient. The 4 into -2, no, Nagarjuna, that's wrong. 4 into -2 is -8. Look here, okay, 4 into -2 is -8, plus 3 into 2 is 6. So what is -8 plus 6? 4 into -2 -8, 3 into +2 6, -8 plus 6 is how much, Nagarjuna? Baidyanath. Nitin, look here, again you're writing 0. How are you getting 0? 4 into -2 is -8, plus 3 into 2, 6. So 4 into -2 is -8, 3 into 2 is 6. So what would that result in? This is 4 and this -2 go together. 3 and 2 go together. This gives me 6. This gives me -8. And this -8 and 6 combine to give me this guy. So what is -8 plus 6? Nitin, Nagarjuna, got it? It is -2. Most of you have got this right as 7, but I don't know why you are making mistake. I wish I was there to figure that out so that I could have given more problems to make that clear. Okay, no, don't be so sorry. There's nothing to be sorry. It's good. You be happy that you're making mistake. That means you're learning. Others already know, and there's no point. There's no point. They may not know everything. They may be learning. Okay. So now this guy over here, I do 7 to the 14, and -2 into 2 is -4, and 14 minus 4 is 10. Baidyanath, but ReLU will be 0. That's right. ReLU will be 0. We have not. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Thank you. My mistake. I forgot that I've done ReLU over here. Shit. Thank you so much. What can I do? Okay, so this we got as 7, and this we got as how much we got this as 3 to the 6, and A minus 8 plus 6 is minus 2. And so ReLU of this, the output, as Bajanath very correctly said, and I think Gaurav also, many people did that. My mistake. I apologize. So sorry. So this becomes 0. And 7 twos are 14. 14 minus plus 0 into 2 is 0. So this becomes 14. Very good. Very good. Sorry. And then that's why you were writing this output as 0. But my question more was, what is this question mark? Not the output over here. But anyway, so I think everyone got it correct. Some people missed the ReLU, though I designed the question myself, but I forgot. Yeah. So 7, 0, and 14 are the correct answer, as DD you mentioned earlier. My apologies. Okay, so you have understood over here how to get these weights. Given the weights you have there, this is basically the forward propagation kind of thing. So you get the induced local field over here, and you get the activation function, and you get the output over here. So that is basically what is neural nets. So where does this inspiration come from? This whole machine learning thing, I hope you understand. It's like a child who touches a hot object and realizes, a hot bulb or a hot lamp or a hot candle, realizes that it's hot and does never touch it again. Otherwise, he or she is very curious to touch the fire. So then that is a kind of learning. You keep playing chess, you learn chess. Then there's a learning which involves, cycling or swimming. It's not that you fall down and you're sure that, this is not what you have done, this is what you should have done in cycling or swimming. Uh, so it's like that. So then our whole human learning of languages or anything is using these neurons inside the head. Each neuron has this nucleus, this the main part over here, and these are the dendrites. This is the cell body. The green color is the nucleus inside the cell body. The dendrites are in the cell body. And then there's the axons, which connect to the axon terminal, and that is connected to the next neuron. So this is one neuron in our brain. This one neuron is connected to another neuron. So this dendrites are connected to these axon terminal. Okay, but this is not a linear connection. Okay, this neuron is connected to multiple neurons. This neuron itself is connected by multiple neurons. So there are multiple neurons all connected to each other. And we say when we learn something, we establish those connections, we activate those connections. So when we are learning something new and we are doing it intensely, the frontal lobe of our brain becomes very active, and in fact it increases in size. If you don't use our brain, it slowly starts shrinking. Okay, so it's very important to keep learning, and understand how learning happens is even more important. So these are multiple neurons connect like these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and maybe 7 neurons are connected to this dendrite over here. And this in turn is connected to 4 other neurons, and so on and so forth. When you learn a new language, these activation becomes stronger, and then you get muscle memory and things starts happening, all those things, blah, blah, blah. So then how do we replicate that in real life over here? So then you always have some kind of bias. If you're interested in something, then you need less activation energy to start picking that stuff. Suppose you are interested in geography, or suppose you are interested in playing chess or some kind of quiz, or learning football or the game of go, or dancing or skating, anything. If you are naturally inclined to that kind of thing, then your bias is, your resistance is less. More energy comes to you to learn that thing. But if something is forced on you and you're not interested, then you're not so keen. Then so these are those weights, these black lines is, these are the input values, what you get, what you see on Instagram, what kind of posts you follow in Instagram, people cooking food or people doing bodybuilding or on artificial intelligence. And what are you getting feeds on Twitter, like how your political views are affected by what you see on Twitter or on Facebook. What your relatives are doing, how much you want to avoid them through Facebook is, maybe one of the no's. Like if they are, like if they have started cooking in in this time of lockdown, you may find it kind of like, no, I don't want to do that these people are doing. So that may have a negative weight over here. So what relatives are doing on Facebook, this line may have a negative weight, and what Twitter is telling about COVID, it may have that an impact that, the lockdown is going to be longer or shorter. Then if you already know that it's going to be longer, then your chances of learning cooking may increase or decrease. So if it's longer, then you'll think that, okay, fine, whatever the relatives are doing, let them do, but I have nothing else to do, so I might as well learn cooking. And then on Instagram, you get good posts of people cooking and sharing with their cats and dogs and all those things. And so you decide that, okay, fine, I'll learn cooking. So then, some neuron is affected over here, some neuron is affected over here, and then there's your bias. You start cooking, then how much effort you put. So all these green ones are the input values. Okay, so Gaurav has asked a very good question. It's bias and error are very different thing, and there's a bias and variance trade-off. So I'm sorry, I'll digress a bit from this over here. So first, I'll quickly explain what's a bias and a variance trade-off, and then I'll come back to this. It's important to learn that. So if you're doing this whole course on our own, then we would have done all this already. So suppose I have points like this, these are the points over here. And I don't know if you understand what is a train and test split. Okay, so I have some points like this over here, and I have more points. There are points like this. This red is my test data and test data, and green is my uh, uh, train data. Okay, so there are two lines that I can draw with this green. One is a simple linear regression over here. So for a moment, ignore these red colors and just look at the green colors. So this blue lines fit this green lines quite well. Okay, and but I can have a line which fits this green dots even better. And let me choose another color over here. I can have this also as a line. So this will show very low error. So let's see what is error over here, what is bias over here, what is variance over here. Okay, so in the training model, is there any error in the brown line? My prediction for this line is this point and the actual is this point. My prediction for this X value is this point and the actual is same as this. Okay, similarly for all the green points, I have zero error. Is that clear, Gaurav, that for all the brown line, the green points I have zero error. So this brown line has, in the training data, train error is equal to 0. Okay, and the blue line has train error which is greater than 0. Okay, so let us say that error is 10 units. This blue line has train error which is equal to 10. Okay, now so you have understood what is error. Now we'll understand what is bias and what's a variance. Okay, so now I do the same algorithm on the test data. Now I forget the train data and see which one will show less of an error for that. If I take for test data all the red points, then this brown curve will show a lot of error. Okay, this brown curve is showing lot of error against all these red points, while this blue line is showing very less error as compared to this brown line. So the test error of the blue line is much smaller than the brown line. So the brown line is very much dependent on the data that is chosen as the trained data. It has very high variance. It varies a lot depending on the data. It has low bias but high variance. It can be easily modified. This blue line has a very strong bias. It has to be linear. This brown line can be, this particular brown line is of the polynomial is order 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 or 6, but this brown line is a linear thing. Okay, so the brown line has a lot of bias. It can only be rotated. The slope can be changed or the y-intercept can be changed. Nothing else. Y equal to mx plus c. You can change the m or you can change the c, or if you write it as y equal to beta naught plus beta 1 x1, then you can change beta 1 and beta naught and nothing else. So it is very strongly biased, but it has very low variance. If you suddenly you change some of the green data to red and some of the red data to green, it will not, the beta naught and the beta 1 will not change much. So it does not have a variance that however much you keep changing the data, the beta naught and beta 1 does not change. But for the brown curve, the polynomial curve, the entire curve changes. If you introduce one more data, the whole order of polynomial changes. So it has very low bias but very high variance. It has more error, and so it is always important to, in this case it's simple that that the blue line will be showing less error. But there are cases where we need higher order. Suppose my data is like a parabola or something. Okay, so then if I say that I want to minimize my bias, then it's, if my data is like this, and I say I'll run a linear regression, that will just be a straight line. So it's a very high bias and no variance. Okay, but if I draw a line like this, it has some bias but little variance instead of a line that fits all the points. So we have to always do a bias variance trade-off. That's whole mathematics of it. If any of you want, we can do all of that line by line so that it is extremely clear that mathematically what is happening. Ish has asked a question, just wanted to know, to run test and train model, how important is to choose independent and dependent variable like for X test and Y test? I'm not sure if I get the question. See, when I choose run test and train, I pick it up randomly, Isha. I don't say that I'll pick it from all the variables. So like if I have, output is Y, and this is x1, this is x2, and this is x3. Okay, so output is 1 0 0 0 1 1 0, and x1 is how many miles you traveled in last few months, is say 10,000 miles, and how many countries you have visited in the last few months is 3 countries and or 5 countries, and how many people you have met. You have met 100 1 million people in this time, and you met Kanika Kapoor also. And then this guy has traveled only 100 miles and traveled to no country and met 100 people and blah 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 blah. So I have so much data. Now the question is how to use train data and test data. Okay, so one thing is, a simple way to do it is, suppose you decide that you want 20% of the data as test and 80% of the data as train. So then you take a coin which has a bias of 0.2 or 0.8. So let's say it has a bias of 0.8 and the head comes as 0.8. So you toss the coin for this guy. Okay, so you toss the coin for this guy, first guy, and suppose you get 0.8. You can take 70% or 30% also, that's fine, but you cannot go more low than that, because then depends how much data you have, or the model will not pick up anything. So suppose this coin toss comes as head. Okay, then this goes in your train data. Then this comes as tail. This does not go in your train data. This comes as tail. This does not go in your train data. This comes as head. The entire, all the x values and all, the entire row goes in the test data. So you don't choose independent and dependent variables. It's given. Like in this case, the dependent variable is that the person has got COVID-19 or not. The independent variable is that the person traveled how many kilometers, met how many people, went to how many countries, you know. So you can't say I won't take x1, I'll take x2, or I won't take x2, I'll take x3, and so on and so forth. You have to take all of them. The question is not between the columns. The question is between which row you will take and which row you will skip. Okay, and then there is k-fold cross validation. So if Balaji's confusion is that I missed this, I miss that, so then I'll just take 1 minute to explain that also. And I hope you don't mind if we digress from the topic, because this topic, either I do what I have planned and you don't understand anything, or I do that I have not planned what I have not planned and some of your doubts are clear. So you divide your data into 5 parts: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 20% of the data is here, 20% is here, percentage, 20% is here, 20% is here. And first case you take this as train and the above one as test. Second case you take this as test and remaining as train. Third case you take this as test and remaining as train. Fourth case you take this as test and the remaining as train. And the fifth case you take this as test and remaining as train. And you'll get 5 models. So then, and you can take average or do whatever you want. There are many ways to handle that. So this is called k-fold cross validation. In this case, it's a 5-fold cross validation. And then there's the whole idea of the wisdom of the crowd. So if you have those 5 models, or let's say 3 people, there's Isha, there's Gaurav, and there's Balaji. So there is prediction to be made over here. Balaji is usually wrong over here, but he's right otherwise. Isha is usually wrong over here, but is usually right otherwise. And Gaurav is usually wrong over here, but is usually right otherwise. So now I have a problem to solve. I have a prediction to make, and I ask all 3 of them, whom should I trust? Okay, so this is Balaji. He's right all the time, but he's wrong here. There is Isha, who's right all the time, but is wrong here. And there is Gaurav, who is right all the time, but is wrong here. Rest of the time, he is right. So now the question to ask is, that these are, say, computers. They have computer brain and they get the data. And the question then is asked is whether it's very hot, whether it will rain tomorrow or not. So then Balaji says yes, Isha says no, Gaurav says no, or Balaji says yes, Isha says yes. In this case, what will be your answer? First case. The next case, what will be your answer? That's ensemble, but right, just make it, let's keep it simple without using big words. So, well, if what is it going to y and n? So what is the answer, y or n? Yeah, right, because it's the wisdom of the crowd. It's not like voting exactly, but the fact is it's like vote. It is like voting. Very correct, Balaji. But it's more mathematical, more set theory than that, because then no 2 people are wrong in the same region. If Balaji is wrong, then Isha and Gaurav are right. If Gaurav is wrong in this region, then Isha and Balaji are right in this region. If Isha is wrong over here, then Gaurav and Balaji are right in that region. Is that fine? So, and then there are many mathematical ways to do it. In the last case, what we were doing, if we in the train set, if we keep repeating the data, then we move towards excuse me. Okay, so let's move on. So this is the whole artificial neural network we see over here. We see what the forward propagation is. We see what the backward propagation is. And my whole intention was, at least in the first basic lecture, to get you very comfortable with this vocabulary and the mathematics that is happening over here. This is simple class 11, one line, one class, half a class of calculus, the chain rule, and the entire neural nets opens up so beautifully over here. It's absolutely unbelievable. The entire back propagation algorithm, it's done amazingly over here. And that is, I wanted to put more diagrams, like keep moving forth between this diagram and to completely visually make it clear to you. So you could have done this. Whereas it's not complete, I'm still I thought that 1.5 or 2 hours I won't be able to complete it. but I've not even I've not even started it, in fact. So I'll send the PDF, no worries. But keep in mind that the whole backward propagation is not complete. This takes 2 or 3 lectures, but once you've done it, it's it will be. And once you do paper and pen, not listening to some kind of talk or something, once you just write it down, then it's completely done. Okay, fine. So I'm sorry for taking your time, extra time. So if you, it will be nice if you give your feedback to Asha. That will help me, even if it's negative feedback, to improve my teaching and getting better material prepared. So thanks a lot. Be safe. Bye bye.